I remember one day I saw a car, it was a camper, a motorhome, and I got off my bicycle because it was big like a city bus.
Like a bus, yeah.
After that there was a boat, and behind that there was a car. It was like a train on the road, and those people sat high and mighty on their chairs inside that motor. They stopped, they watched us. Those people are on bicycle. They have everything on this one little bicycle. They were really staring at each other. How is it possible? I'd never seen a thing like that. Now, it's not possible in the Netherlands. All the roads would be clogged by those.
So I would like to know, like, what's your memory of your first bicycle, and like when you were young, like what kind of bicycles did you used to ride? But the whole topic today is bicycles.
Okay.
Like we're going to talk about bicycles. Yeah. So Mariamartha, welcome again.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah, we were discussing about Amsterdam and about you growing up in Amsterdam in the last conversation, and it was quite informative, I think, for a lot of my audience. Going further in this series of exploring Netherlands and Amsterdam together with you, we would like to know more about a very important thing in Netherlands, almost integrated as a part of Dutch lifestyle. It's the bicycles. So I would like to know, like, what's your memory of your first bicycle? But the whole topic today is bicycles.
Okay.
Like, we're going to talk about bicycles. Yeah.
My first memory of bicycles is sitting in front of my father in a little chair on his handlebar.
Yeah.
And watching around me. I can remember that. After that, after I got bigger, I went on the back side of my mother's bicycle in another seat, a bigger seat. There were the houses weren't big in Amsterdam, and when you had a bicycle of your own, you couldn't put it in the house. You had no shed, no balconies, and apartment blocks.
Okay.
And so there were, in another street, there was a stalling. And there you could put your bicycle. You had to pay an amount of money in a month. And the man who had this cellar, it was rather cellar-like. You had to go downstairs to put your bicycle, but he also had a repair shop. So when there was a flat tire, he could mend it and you paid for it. That's my first memory. And then it was a bit, it cost money, so there wasn't much money. So my father put his bicycle in I can't find the English word, in the stalling, we called it. And my mother's bicycle, we had to carry it up 2 stairs to put it in the apartment.
Okay.
And children's bicycles, there weren't hardly any in the beginning of the 50s. But you could rent children's bicycles for 10 cents an hour.
10
Gulden.
cents, you mean? Okay.
For the gulden.
The previous currency of
the previous currency, yeah. And but these bicycles did not have brakes, not hand on the handles, steering. No, it's not the steering wheel. What do you call it? The handlebar. And no bicycles, no brake in the wheels. So it was rather dangerous. But
I mean, just to make it more clear, in the current times, I know the Dutch bikes where you the paddle. If you paddle in the reverse, it will just
brake.
Be a brake. It will just brake.
They weren't there. No.
Okay.
They were just on the adult bikes, not on this little children's bike that you could rent for an hour. It was just like a toy you could rent.
Okay, I think I saw those bikes in Decathlon, and I think my son also has one right now. And it's basically without even the pedals.
No, there were pedals.
Okay, the kids'
but
bike
the kids' bikes, you have them without pedals. They're like walking cycles, we call them.
But the one that you are explaining was with the pedals, but without the brakes.
Without the brakes.
Okay.
Which was rather scary in the beginning. But anyway, I learned how to cycle on a bicycle like that. But when I was 7, I think about 7 years or 8, I became too heavy for my mother to take me on her bicycle. So then my parents bought a children's bicycle for me with brakes in the reverse.
Okay, so the technology was there, but apparently it was because of the cost and other factors. There were some bikes which were probably made cheaper for someone to have it without the brakes for a lower cost. Maybe, for example, you were explaining about the rental bikes. So, and also I think it has lesser maintenance if the brakes are not there.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. But okay, I will also share my memory from India when I was growing up. It was quite an excitement, quite a thing for a kid to get a bicycle.
Yeah.
And why? It was usually a thing in the middle class families that you get the bicycle only if you score well or you do well in your exams or in your school. So it was kind of a negotiation that you get into with your parents, and only after that if you excel there, whatever you have promised, I don't know, like this might sound a little bit weird to you.
In my case, it doesn't sound weird at all. But in my case, I was too heavy to sit on the back side of my mother.
Okay.
And public transport was expensive. And our relatives lived in North Holland, about 30 kilometers from Amsterdam. So it was cheaper to buy a bicycle for me. It was our way of transport.
Yeah.
And also our way of going on a holiday when we couldn't afford holidays. So when my father, when it was nice weather, my father took a day off, and we went on a bicycle tour from Amsterdam, and I got to know all the surroundings of Amsterdam.
I think also we are talking two different timelines. Talking about 90s, and you're probably talking about 50s.
Yeah.
And but still, like, I could resonate with a lot of things. And geographically also, like, India is like way different compared to Netherlands. Netherlands is more flat, and in India also, like, we travel to like very large distances as well. At least I have a memory of doing that in my childhood. And bicycle was more of a thing, not really necessity. You may or may not go to your school on bicycle. Really depends, how far your school is. It could be applicable in the very initial years, let's say the primary school, or in Dutch we say basisschool, which is nearby your house. You might consider sending your kid on the bicycle. Otherwise, usually there were like school buses who would pick and drop the kids, or maybe the parents pick and drop, like very
In
standard.
Amsterdam there were no school buses, so you had to go by. Now on a primary school, I went walking.
Yeah.
But when I went to secondary school, I went on bicycle. Only when it was raining very hard or snowing or whatever.
Yeah.
I got a bus ticket, and I could go by tram.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bus, but a tram.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it was our usual way of transport.
Yeah.
Bicycle.
Very practical, and I think in today's time, if you bring those parameters, it's very sustainable. It's practical.
Yeah.
Budget friendly.
Yeah.
You can. The list keeps on going.
Yeah.
But a little bit curious of because Dutch and bicycles, I think they go hand in hand. Like there's so many references to that. I mean, and I live here, also know it's the thing still. It's kind of intact with the culture. But let's say you must have seen evolution even in the bicycles to compare to what we have. I'm not talking about the electric bikes, but like standard city bikes, what used to be then. How has it evolved? Also something...
No, first you had just the bicycle with brakes, and that's it. And after that, the more luxurious bikes had 3 versnelling, oh my goodness. Gears. 3 gears, if you were lucky. And then later you got those racing bikes that got more gears.
Yeah.
And then normal bikes also could have more gears. But then I was already, when I got a bicycle with 3 gears, I was an adult. And when I went to Spain on bicycle in 1996 by
Yeah.
myself, I had a bicycle with 3/7, so I could make shift 21 times. So
Interesting.
because I had to climb mountains.
Yeah. Was it
And then I
probably
was
that
in
was
my 40s.
in your 40s? Probably that was a mountain bike, or
No, it was not a mountain bike. It was a hybride, you called it.
hybrid. Yeah.
Hybrid.
Yeah.
Just in between a normal city bicycle or a mountain bike.
Yeah.
So it had a slightly bigger tires, and it had gears, and it was not a very heavy bike.
Yeah. But also looking at the bicycles, let's say the ones which are having the pedal brakes, when did that come? Or was it always there? And I'm also curious to know, when was the first time like the bicycles with the handbrakes became popular? Was it
I don't
already?
know. There were already hand brakes. An English brand, for instance, Rally. My mother got a Rally at one time, I think also in the 50s. And that had hand bikes,
Okay.
hand brakes. And it was so chrome, you know? So
With the curve, or
it
that
was
long,
on an, kind of a stang.
with the
You call it
metal.
like this, and then metal, yeah.
Okay.
You could brake by pressing your hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got a new bike when I was 7 years old because there were no second-hand children's bikes after the war.
Yeah.
And when I got bigger, I went to secondary school, I got my mother's bike and she got a new one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think if you share the bike in the family, why not?
With children's bike ook. When children got too big for the bike, smaller children got the bike, or you sold it, or you gave it away to relatives. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I think we've covered like a lot about your experience with the bike. Growing up, having the bike, owning it, and several things. One thing I want to really highlight is that the most beautiful thing still that's in Netherlands, and I admire that, is people still use bicycles, and doesn't matter whether the person is a student or a working professional, whatever post he is at, for example, he would or she would not hesitate using the bicycle, and that's quite something.
It's very normal means of transport.
Yeah.
And I think there are more bicycles than people in the Netherlands, because many people do have 2 bikes. And even now with the electric bikes, we also have a normal bike and an electric bike. So the 2 of us have 4 bikes.
Yeah.
I don't use my normal bike, not very much anymore, because there's something wrong with it and it costs a lot of money to repair it. So I think I'm old enough that I'm allowed to use my electric bike.
Yeah, I agree. One thing which is very important we should talk about, and that's about the infrastructure of the bike lanes. And I think a lot of us would have questions about it. So I would start with mine, talking about the infrastructure. Was it always like this, neatly paved, with the colors like red? Velvety cycle path, let's say. I call it like that in my own words.
There were cycle paths.
Yeah.
But sometimes they were horrible, because they were just like with those tiles, those square tiles you find in the streets to walk on, and they always go, they're not equally paved.
Aligned, yeah.
So, and they were not very comfortable. And then you had cemented paths, and now they're almost everywhere, they're asphalt, tarmacked.
Okay.
And there were not that many as there are now. And in the sometimes in natural areas there were sandy cycling paths.
Okay.
You couldn't cycle when it was very dry. It was very mull, we call it. I don't know the English word. Mull sand. I can look it
Like
up.
a slippery one, or
No,
or
no,
anything
no. Mull. That's very soft. The sand is very soft and deep, and so you can't come through it. Yeah, when it was very wet. Yeah, it was also muddy. You couldn't cycle. So.
Yeah.
But now in Drenthe, the province of Drenthe, here in the north of the country, is the province with the most kilometers of cycling paths in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of attention is paid so that people can travel safely to their work along busy roads. There's all after the war they made a lot of those cycling paths along the roads and off the road so that you can make a nice trip.
Yeah. I mean, your last memory of this broken infrastructure, like not really that great, it's from which year? Like, which year were you mentioning? I mean, you were explaining about the...
I'm explaining about 70 years. So in the current of time, cycling paths became more cycling paths and they became better cycling paths.
But when did it start improving?
60s. When they got money, things could be improved. From the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they still are doing that.
So 60s onwards, like it was more seriously taken care of?
Yeah.
With attention and more funds being allocated to the improvement in the infrastructure?
Maybe later, I don't know. But now even they try to make safe cycling ways for people to go from one city to the other. In Groningen, the province of Groningen, they have those canals. And from Groningen to Assen, for instance, they try to make a cycling path along the canal without cars. So that's only used by cyclists, and which are very safe.
I can only think of it in Netherlands, and I have never heard this intercity travel by bicycle, very normal.
They're trying to implement them now.
Yeah. It's really an interesting one. But it also makes me think that what were the circumstances that led to people think that cycles or bicycles actually could be so useful.
It's experience.
Yeah.
And everything. Yeah, follow the money.
Yeah.
Follow the money. It's cheap.
Yeah.
It's good for your health. It's good for nature.
Yeah.
And from the 70s, there was became more attention for nature as well.
In 70s,
it's not new, this climate business.
No.
Because 50 years ago we were also talking about climate and about biological food. And that's not new, but it was not as general as it is becoming now, because it's more necessary.
Okay, so that's something new. I was never really in conversation with anyone like having this first-hand knowledge, understanding that people were already talking about that. So probably the sense was there, people had the sense. Like
but in
silos.
In some circles. I told you my children, my eldest two, went to the Vrije School, the anthroposophical school, and Rudolf Steiner and his anthroposophy. He also had theories on food, on medicine, on nature, on agriculture. And my children went there in the 70s. So in the 70s I already was interested in healthy food, healthy medicine, and it's not new at all, but it was not very general.
It was not very general. It was not the mainstream.
It was not mainstream.
Was it ever a part of manifesto? For example, like political campaign, someone is doing some...
Not really.
So it was...
Not like the GroenLinks, our Green Party.
Yeah.
It wasn't there yet, but people don't fall from... things don't fall from the air. It's a development.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
And Rudolf Steiner had already, he was from before the Second World War. with his theories. So it's not very new.
Mm.
But he was not generally known.
And now this has become more like a crisis, or at least it's getting projected as a crisis, the whole climate change.
We had a report of Rome. When was that? It's decades ago. And it was already well known that there was a climate issue. But people didn't want to hear of it. Now we have spoiled so much that you can't get around it anymore.
Yeah. It's also very surprising that when you mention about this, the infrastructure about the bicycle lane, so there was an involvement of government as well, probably, for this initiatives. Probably it was coming from the demand of people as well. It was also economically cheaper for individuals to afford it. But interesting thing is that at the same time, there was also a lot of boom for the vehicles, individual or personal vehicles, cars, automobiles.
Yeah.
And how was that? Like, you must have lived through that experience. So was it because the cars were still not in reach of a lot of people? They were expensive?
My father had his first car in 1963.
Okay.
It was a second-hand Ford Savior. And that's what they could afford. My parents never could afford a new car.
Yeah.
So, and why did he need a car? I don't know. To go on holidays, because to his work it was easier to get by bus and boat. He had to take a little boat to get to the north of Amsterdam. And when people get money, they want things. People are greedy. People want to have things. And then when your neighbor buys a car, you also want to buy a car.
That is so true.
When one relative buys a car, you also want a nicer car. So that's how it went.
Yeah.
That's what I remember, anyway.
No, but it's counter to the culture which is still preserved about the bicycles. That makes me wonder and question even more, because I have seen in India, like there was a time when, like, it was not so common for people to have cars. Affordability, maintenance, service cost goes together. And this was before the markets were global. I'm talking about the 80s. That was the last, which was still like closed economy. And there was a general trend you would see, like if one owns a car, it would be rare for you to see them going on a bicycle again.
Yeah, here so it was also parallel. You had the bicycle, and you kept using it, and you had a car.
Yeah. No, but like if you have a car, if you bought a car and you had a bicycle, it was probably normal to people for people to use car and bicycle both, time to time, as and when whichever thing is practical at this time.
No. Now my parents could go to my grandparents by car, which was faster, of course. And they could go when it rained, or in winter. You didn't go on bicycle when it rained or it was very cold.
Yeah.
But so it gave you more opportunities to reach larger distances.
Yeah.
So you could see something of the country, of your own country. So yeah, that's.
I think it also becomes practical with the country being small and flat, and the infrastructure laid in such practical way that there are dedicated cycling lanes in Netherlands, and it just connects cities as well. So what can you expect better than that? And it's really one of the best examples.
Yeah, when you want to go from Amsterdam to Amersfoort, you can cycle. I did at the end of the 50s.
Yeah.
I went with a family of a friend to Stroe, which is a village past Amersfoort. And there was also a cycling path along the road, and there were just 2 lanes roads, and it was not highways, not yet.
Yeah.
And but it was all rather primitive. So now you would go on a holiday with a family of 6, 7. You wouldn't go on bicycles.
Yeah.
You would go by car, because you can take more stuff. Yeah. And then we each had a bag on the back of our bicycles. And that was it for a whole week.
Yeah. No, I think I agree what you're saying. I could relate to it. Very much understand what you're saying. So intercity travel with the cycle thing, with that long distance between Amsterdam and Amersfoort, it's not really practical in every day. But what I'm appreciating is that there is an infrastructure between those cities, those two cities, and it is well maintained. So even if it's your holiday trip, there is a possibility. And because the country is so small and flat, probably that's the reason it's possible. And the second is like the dedication to keep it well functional. That's the most important factor why it still stays there intact. You know, there are funds allocated to it for the maintenance of the cycling lanes along with the proper normal roads. So they are taken care with respect, with responsibility, and that is what I'm trying to appreciate here.
Yeah, but when you could afford a car, there came more and more cars, and there was not much attention for cyclists. And now these days, when you go here from here to the city, to the center, you can cycle as a cyclist, and you don't have to get off your bicycle. But in the old formerly, every road you had to get off your bicycle.
Okay.
Let the cars pass, and that was not very comfortable. So people rather took their cars than the bicycles. And because they want to promote cycling now, the country and the city councils are making it more comfortable for cyclists.
Okay.
So that they can promote cycling and keep all those gases from away.
That's
That's
good
development.
To know,
First, bicycles, a vehicle was a luxury item, and that was important. And all attention, all money went to roads, motorways, things like that.
Okay.
And when I was young, I don't know how many motorways there were. Maybe one or two.
A2.
I've seen them being built. You know.
Okay. A2 was probably still there.
A2, no. A2 was 2 lanes.
Okay.
Now 4 lanes when I was driving myself. Yeah. But between Eindhoven and Den Bosch, it's just 2 lanes for years. It's maybe 30 years that it's 4, no, not even that. It's 4 lanes from Eindhoven to Den Bosch.
Okay.
A50 is one of the newest.
A50.
A50 from here to the north. Yeah, from Eindhoven to the north. When here you have to drive to Os and then you pick up the A50. Here it's 59. When you go to the direction Os-Nijmegen, you pick up the A50 from Eindhoven all the way to Zwolle and further on.
Okay. And like road between Eindhoven and Amsterdam was still like a very like 2-way.
No, it was 2 ways until Den Bosch.
And
anyway,
after that
it was 4 lanes, and it has never become much more because of the rivers and the bridges. Yeah. And now there's this, where we live here, Empel, is knooppunt. All those English words, they're so new. I never learned them in my studies, all those new words, you know. So I lack modern vocabulary. When I went from Harwich to Edinburgh, there was also, in England, was 2 lanes, all with hundreds of roundabouts.
I still see that driving in Oxford, reading that old England, or around that circle, you know, once I did it. So very narrow roads. I think it's two lane only. Yeah. Probably something similar.
But from the south to Edinburgh was 2 lane road. Now there are motorways.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. And I'm probably seeing some patterns there, but it's up to interpretations as well. For example, like, so you're saying like there was probably a time when car was probably an item of luxury and considered more safe, because when you were mentioning that people had to get off their bike at some point, maybe the roundabouts or some crossing points.
Every crossing point you had to get off because the car came from the right and they had voorrang. preference.
Yeah, I think very much like I would not compare for a moment India. I would compare even America or Canada. They're still like it's not the best infrastructure for the bicycles.
No, not at all. When
No.
we went in, when was it? 2001. We took our bicycles to Chicago. There we drove by car to the border of Ontario, and there we started our trip, our tour. And people, our relatives, pizza relatives, telephoned us. You shouldn't do this. It's too dangerous to travel here on bike.
Yeah.
People are not used to see cyclists, to wait for them, to give them space and things like that. And we thought, now we're not crazy. We are going. And I had made an itinerary.
Yeah.
And not along motorways, of course, that's not allowed, but all those country roads. And it was perfect.
Yeah.
We were stared at because we had our luggage in the back and on the front of our wheels.
Yeah.
And I remember one day I saw a car. It was a camper, a motorhome. And I got off my bicycle because it was big like a city bus.
Like a bus, yeah.
After that there was a boat, and behind that there was a car. It was like a train on the road, and those people sat high and mighty on their chairs inside that motor. They stopped, they watched us. Those people are on a bicycle. They have everything on this one little bicycle. We were really staring at each other. How was it possible? I'd never seen a thing like that. Now, it's not possible in the Netherlands. All the roads would be clogged by those.
I think it's such a wonderful example, like you could do so much with so little. And to the extent one can go to exploit, the resources we have.
Yeah.
Like it's such a good parallel, such a good example. Like you mentioned about the story of you being in America and someone from the motorhome watching you on the bicycle, like having all your household stuff, like at least for that duration,
Anyway, one of those relatives was very, very concerned, and he bought a second-hand telephone.
GPS.
No, it was not yet. It was 2001. Okay. You had no GPS yet, not on the phone. It was not a smartphone. But anyway, so that he could contact us, that he could call us on the way, an American thing. And and even we went to a park, a national park, a natural area, and it was Algonquin Park, and it was about 80 kilometers we had to drive through that park, and he went after us by car to check if we were still safe. He didn't find us because we rented a cottage for a few days and a car, and so we could go into the park and then walk trails.
Okay. He couldn't find you guys.
We had lots of adventures, Piet and I. Our honeymoon was also on a bicycle.
Wow.
Over Greek islands.
Oh.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And the last cycling tour we made, or trip we made, was 6 years ago. Piet was already nearly 88. And we cycled all the way from the border to Denmark until Poland.
Wow.
And along the OC, Baltic Sea, it's called somewhere. Anyway, it was very nice.
Very interesting.
It was our last holidays on our own energy.
Super high.
And the rest we walked.
Yeah, that's another thing I think
We walked with backpacks. That's the nicest thing to do, because then you really are in nature. You can follow small paths and yeah.
I think with the bicycle and the possibility to walk, even that's amazing to have, that infrastructure, the walking, how do you say, the pedestrian paths, or pedestrian lanes. It makes everything so accessible. If you are on a bicycle or by walk, like you could just explore so much and not worry about parking your car or finding a parking space or all those kind of things.
My daughter is a member of a society which is called the Wereldfietser, so the world cyclist. And people are member of that who make big cycling tours all over the world. And my daughter was planning a trip along the Pacific.
Okay.
And she had already booked a flight with a bicycle and had taken off a few months to do that. And then she fell ill, so she couldn't do it. But every year she makes a cycling tour. Now she goes by train to Berlin. And then she makes a tour of Germany, also along the Oostzee, coast of the Oostzee, Baltic Sea, I think it's called, and East Germany. And then she goes back by train again, but usually she cycles to Rome, to Santiago, along the Atlantic, France, along the coast, tour of England, Ireland. Yeah, that's, she inherited that from me, I think.
Yeah, it's very Dutch, right?
Very Dutch.
Yeah.
But you know, it's so satisfying. It's so basic. You meet lots of people, all the people who go walking with a backpack or cycling with their luggage.
Yeah.
They are interested. Where are you from? Where are you going to? You make lots of acquaintances, and you experience how many nice and good people there are. How much help you can get if you need it. That there's always a place to sleep, and that we have never been without food, which was a miracle sometimes.
Yeah.
But it forms you and it makes you happy with little things.
Yeah, yeah. It gives you more of a realization of what you're explaining, how little you need.
Yeah.
And also the social interactions, the probability of having social interactions. So definitely agree on this part.
Yeah.
Goes back to bicycles or even walking.
I regret that I didn't do this when my children were young. But my former husband, he didn't like making one step by himself or cycling tours, so we never did it. But I'm very sorry, because I think it's good for children to realize that those basic physical exercises makes you feel so healthy and makes you enjoy nature. And then you also realize how important climate is. You know, you will look after your own earth better in your own place, because we can only do those little things.
Yeah.
I think so. Those days, it wasn't possible for me, and we went camping also very basically, because there was never money. I've never been rich, but still we made do with it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed many nice things.
Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned about being rich, I was listening to one interview of Bob Marley. He was just questioning, like, what kind of rich are you talking about? Is it about the money or experiences or living life to the max with the happiness you seek for? So that definition is also like, if we go in the philosophical sense, but still.
In Holland, there are two words which I like. It's between welvaart. Welvaart is having goods and money. Welvaart, sorry. And welzijn, well-being. Welvaart and welzijn. Dus well-being and having things.
Yeah, money and wealth.
Yeah, money and wealth.
So money and
goods
versus health.
Yeah.
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 So you need to have a balance.
It's not really be healthy, but also be satisfied, make do, to be able to make do with what you have.
Yeah.
It's
all about experiences when you are on Earth.
Yeah.
Let's say.
Yeah.
It was an amazing conversation. It went a little bit slow, I think, from my side, at least for asking questions. But I think we covered almost all what I wanted. Like the whole conversation was supposed to be about the bicycles, especially in Netherlands, and it's inspiring, especially the infrastructure. And because it's a safe infrastructure for the bicycles, we tend to do more bicycling and like get it daily.
Historically, I'm not very good at facts, but you can also
I will.
You can look them up, and it's what I experienced and what I remember.
That's what mattered. Like anyone can look it up on Google. Like specific facts can only come up from the person. But yeah, I think thanks for your time.